As developers, there are going to be times when we need to be able to keep digital information secret from individuals we don't trust. Encryption gives us the ability to keep our secret information secret and allows us to keep our jobs if we work with sensitive information. In this video, we're going to go over what encryption is, why you need it, and discuss the major types. Hello developers, and welcome to PHP Developers TV, your home for everything you need to know to be a knowledgeable PHP developer. I'm your host, Scott Keck-Warren. What is encryption and decryption? Encryption is the process of encoding information so only authorized parties can then decode the information. This is done by converting the original information, also known as plain text, into a format known as ciphertext. There are two ways data can be encrypted: at rest, which is when it's stored, or in transit, while it is being transmitted. Why do we need encryption? Encryption has a lot of benefits for both us and our end users. Privacy is by and large the biggest benefit. By using encryption, we can be sure that no one can read data or communications except for the individuals who should have access to the original data. An example of privacy through encryption is something that we use every day: SSL and TLS. The protocols that change our websites from HTTP to HTTPS provide privacy so nobody intercepting the transmission between the client and the website can see the data transmitted between them. The next benefit we gain from encryption is security. Encryption will help prevent data breaches. If a storage device is stolen or an S3 bucket is marked as public, having that data encrypted will prevent random people from reading the information. Encryption can also make sure that our data hasn't been altered. We can make sure the data still has integrity by verifying a signed digital signature of the data. Encryption can provide authentication to our data. Public key encryption can be used to verify that the owner of a website is the one originating the data and not an untrusted third party. Public key encryption can also be used to encrypt data so only the owner of the corresponding private key can decrypt the data. This authenticates that they are the ones who should have access as well. Finally, encryption can provide regulatory compliance. Multiple compliance standards require encryption to be used throughout the data transfer and storage processes. How does encryption and decryption work? Digital encryption and decryption need two inputs to the system. The first thing we need is the data to encrypt. We call this data plain text, and it can be anything. Credit card information and grandma's secret cookie recipe are both valid data we might want to encrypt. The second thing we need is a cryptographic key. A cryptographic key is a string of characters the encryption algorithm will use to alter the plain text. It's called a key because, like the physical key we might secure our home with, the encryption key locks or encrypts our data, and the data can only be unlocked or decrypted when someone unlocks it using the corresponding key. Much like a physical key, we don't want to be giving it out to anyone on the street, and we're only going to give it to people who we truly trust. After we have our plain text and key, we need to pick an algorithm that will perform the encrypting and decrypting. There are a lot of potential options for algorithms like AES and Salsa 208. When we first get started, it's going to be like an acronym soup, but don't be overwhelmed. After we take all these pieces and run the plain text and the key through the algorithm, we'll get our output of ciphertext. If the algorithm is designed correctly, the ciphertext will look as though someone randomly picked bits of data. There's a famous example called the ECB Penguin that shows an encryption algorithm that doesn't do this and is potentially insecure. The ECB Penguin took a picture of Tux the Penguin and ran it through the AES encryption. The output produced another image that, while encrypted, shows a very clear structure in relationship to the input. Ideally, the output should look something like this. Encrypting in the information age. For most of history, encryption was a manual process that was only employed by the military. Encrypting and decrypting data in the information age is another beast entirely because of how fast computers can do math. When discussing encryption strength, we're talking about the number of bits that are used in the key and how hard it would be to break the encryption using brute force. Generally, the more bits in the key, the stronger the encryption. So we'll get more strength from a 512-bit key than we would from a 128-bit key. For example, DES originally used a 56-bit key, but that only allowed for a possible key space of 2 to the 56, which can be brute forced using cloud computing in a reasonable amount of time. The size for modern encryption keys is upwards of 1024 bits, which is impossible to brute force because the key space is so large. Failures. So we talked about how it's technically possible for attackers to break our encryption. There are a couple of ways to do this. The most basic way is to brute force the encryption key used for the encryption. As computing resources have gotten cheaper, it's possible to use something like crack.sh to break a DES key in a little more than a day. As we move to larger key sizes, this becomes less and less likely. A 1024-bit key increases the key space so much it would be prohibitively expensive for any non-nation state to break the encryption. And even then, they would really want to have to get to that data. It's also possible to find flaws in the encryption algorithm. This is less likely, but it does occasionally happen. The final attack to break encryption is an attack on the computers or the individuals who possess the keys. It's much easier to decrypt a message someone is sending if an attacker installs a keylogger on the victim's computer and just logs all of their data, or if they just physically force them to give up their key. What you need to know to nail a job interview. Encryption is the process of encoding information, so only authorized parties can then decode the information. Encryption provides privacy, security, integrity, authentication, and regulatory compliance. As always, thank you for watching our video. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and comment, as it helps others find our videos and makes us feel good. How are you using encryption at work? Do you have questions or concerns about it? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, this is Scott Keckwarren signing off.